This week on the Media Boss Podcast.
So my goal in life was always, I'm a huge comic book guy. Comic books basically taught me how to read. I still consume them voraciously even now. All right, good, yeah. And my goal was always, I want to be able to...
Media Boss Podcast is brought to you by two of our new partners. One is Pantheon. I can't wait to tell you about them later. And brought to you by Convert and Flow. You're going to learn so much about them. But now it's time for the Media Boss Podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Media Boss Podcast. I'm Dr. Barrett Matthews, and I'm excited to be here. I think you guys are going to be excited too, if you're not already. I mean, today, of course, I do have another great show, as you probably know, and I have an even greater guest, as you probably know already. But I'm just excited to hear the topic we're going to be talking about, because it's going to be a lot of fun, very interesting topic for you guys in dealing with media. So it's going to be real cool. Now, for those of you who are wondering, what is the Media Boss Podcast? I want to make it clear for you. So the Media Boss Podcast is for any of you out there who have a business and want to get your word out there, want to get more people coming towards you. Well, the best way to do that is through media. Understand this, everybody consumes their information through one form of media or another. Well, the thing is, if you're everywhere where they're looking, then they won't miss you and you won't miss them. All I'm saying is make sure that your business can be seen, heard, felt, whatever, in all forms of media. That way you can become what I call a media boss. Now, what I'd like for you guys to do is make sure you share this episode, make sure you're subscribed and share this episode. Let everybody know that you're listening to the Media Boss Podcast. And one other thing, I hope you guys like travel. If you like travel, I want you to stick to the end of the podcast, because at the very end, I'm going to give away something for those of you who stick around that I think you're going to like if you like traveling. If you don't like traveling, not so much. But if you like traveling, I think you'll like what I have for you. So stick around to the very end. Now, I like to start off every episode with something I like to call a Media Minute. Now, what's the Media Minute? The Media Minute is where I share some information or tips, some news about the media that I think can help you guys out there. And today I want to talk to you writers out there, you writers. One thing I just want to say is this: make sure that you check your editing. And some of you, and here's why I say this, because some of you out there, you're writing books, you're writing ebooks, you're writing magazines, and you have an editor, and the editor may do a great job. But guess what? They're human too. And sometimes editors make mistakes. So make sure that you are checking the editing of your book so that you can have it right. That is your Media Minute for the day. So my guest today, I'm excited to have him. Now, I just want to let you guys know this. He's a comic book letterer for over 10 years. That means he's done a lot of work. He's a podcast host. He's done over 150 episodes, man. We haven't done that many, but he's done over 150 episodes. He is the author of a best-selling Luther Cross series books. Now, hey, you all heard of those? He's the author, and he's published over 30 novels. I thought I was doing something with 3. Now, I want to bring to the Media Boss Podcast none other than Perry Constantine. Perry, welcome to the Media Boss Podcast, my friend.
Thanks, Barrett. Thanks for that introduction. I don't think I think you praised me more than anyone else in my life has done.
Well, I feel like such a slacker now. But I'm like, whoa, this man is doing some stuff. And I'm just doing.
Oh, believe me, there are some people out there who put me to shame. So I'm probably mid-tier. You should see some of the romance authors, especially, man. They crank those things out. They're getting like a book or 2 out a month. It's insane.
And that's what I wanted to ask you. So how often are you putting out books, man? 30 books. Jeez.
So it's been an ebb and flow. Most of my books, they're not really long books. They're about, on average, about 50,000 words or so. Okay. Early on, I was doing more novella stuff. Those were more about like the 30,000 range. So, and I just, when I was at my peak, when I was putting out like a book a month or so, it was because I was fortunate enough at the time to have a job where I had a lot of downtime and I was just sitting in front of a computer. So it gave me lots of time to write. And yeah, I just kept cranking them out because of that. Now it's become a little bit harder. I got 2 kids. I've got jobs that actually do keep me busy a lot. So it's a little bit harder to keep up that kind of pace. So I do about I try to shoot for about 2 to 3 books a year. Sometimes I meet that, sometimes not. But I had a book that came out. I think I put out 2 books last year, and I'm hoping to get 2 or 3 out in 2023 as well.
Okay. Once again, I feel like a slacker.
I mean, that's just the way. That's the way the indie publishing is. Like it's very much a kind of shark mentality. You gotta keep swimming or else you die. So it's tough. It's tough out there in indie publishing. You got to just keep putting out more product, or it's hard to stay relevant on the charts.
I mean, you got me first when you were saying you at your peak you were putting out a book a month.
Mm-hmm.
That you do know that sounds crazy, right?
I know. Okay. I wish I could
get.
I mean, I look back on those days and I'm like, how did I do that? And it was just a matter of just having the amount of time to really put into it, which unfortunately I don't have anymore.
And I also like the fact when you said at your peak, you said like you're like 80 years old now or something. But that's funny. Wow. So the genres of your book, talk about that.
So right now I'm mostly doing urban fantasy stuff. So what began with the Luther Cross series has become kind of like a shared universe of books. So I started off with Luther Cross, and by the time I got to about book 4 or 5, the books are doing well, but I'm just like, I don't want to just keep doing this same character. I want to kind of do other stories with different characters. And I had created a bunch of supporting characters in the world who are really interesting. So I decided, you know what, instead of trying to continue the series and forcing myself until I hate it, or instead of just, ending it and then moving on to something new, which is what I've done in the past, I thought, well, I'm going to stay in this world, but just focus on different characters in the world. So I did 6 books with Luther Cross, and then I switched over to the Morningstar series, focusing on my depiction of Lucifer, did 5 books in that series. And when I was getting to the end of that series, I polled my readers and I asked them, which characters that you've seen in the universe so far, would you be interested in seeing a series about? And I gave them a list of some of the characters that I was interested in, gave them an option to put in their own versions or give their own suggestions. And the results were kind of surprising. They suggested a character that I threw him in there just because I thought, well, he was in there, I could probably do something with him. Let me put his name on there. And I figured he's not going to be the one everybody picks. Turns out everybody picked that guy. So now I've actually started work on the first novel in what's going to be called the Mark of Cain series, which will be coming out hopefully sometime in late January, early February is kind of where I'm shooting for right now.
That is so cool. I mean, I'm like, wow, you're like a serious writer. I couldn't imagine that type of production. I mean, I like to think I'm a creative thinker, but you're really a creative thinker. Have you always been like that?
Yeah, like going back to when I was a little kid, I would make up stories with like my action figures and all that and act them out. I started writing, I had these, my mom would buy all these notebooks for class and stuff. And I wouldn't fill them with notes. I'd fill them with stories.
Well, that's great.
From the time I was like maybe, 8 or 9 years old, I was doing that, just, writing stories in them. And then when I was in my teenage years, I got into internet fan fiction, and I was doing like a lot of internet fan fiction, comic book based fan fiction, Marvel and DC stuff, some stuff based on the video game Final Fantasy VII. And I'd met like a lot of people in that community who were my age, who were younger than me, but who were also older than me, and who also had, serious writing talent and experience. So I learned a lot from them as a result too. And sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish, please.
So my goal in life was always, I'm a huge comic book guy. Comic books basically taught me how to read. I still consume them voraciously even now. All right, good. Yeah. And my goal was always, I want to be able to write comic books, but it's tough getting a job working in comics because it's a whole, you gotta have a whole team assembled, and and to pay them what they're worth, it can be very expensive. So you have a very high financial barrier to entry with comic books. But a friend of mine, he was one of these older writers. He was actually my former co-host on my podcast before he passed away about almost 2 years ago now. And he had said to me, I'm waiting for you to write a novel. And I'm like, oh, no. Novels are for serious writers. They're for, I'm like, I'm over here. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And he's like, no, I think you could do it. So I signed up for, National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, and, took a few false starts, but eventually I produced a novel, and that became my first published novel, self-published in 2007. And amazing. Just been going ever since. And yeah, that's basically how I got into it. It's just, a friend said to me, you should do this, and you should you should actually do something with your writing. And so I'm like, oh, okay, let me try it and see what happens.
So you've been, like you said, you were writing stories as a kid. Do you ever go back and look at any of those stories and say you want to turn them into anything now?
So I was writing fan fiction under a pen name. The old notebooks and stuff, I don't have those anymore. Okay. My parents have moved since then, and a lot of stuff got tossed out. So I don't have those anymore. My fan fiction stuff was written under a pseudonym. Some of that stuff is still out there, and I do see it every now and then. I'm just like, oh God. Oh.
Of course. Yeah. Now you're going to say that.
Yeah.
Now, because you're a serious writer now. So,
I even look at that with some of my older books. Like looking back at some of my older books, I'm just like, man. That's why you gotta. You eventually have to get to a point where you're like, I'm satisfied enough with this, so I'm gonna let it sit.
Yeah. And that's true, because I tell people all the time, there's no such thing as perfection. So don't even try it, because you'll drive yourself crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned about how comic books help you to read. I have a family full of school teachers, and my aunt was a school teacher, and I remember her teaching me to read. She used to always give me Batman comic books. Mm-hmm. Now, the sad part of the story, Perry, this was back in the 60s, and my mother threw them away.
Oh yeah, that old story. It's that oldest time, my friend. Yeah, everybody has a story about their mom throwing away their comic books.
Really? I'm like, oh God, comic books from the 1960s. Batman comic books is that. But anyway, so let's talk about you and comic books. Mm-hmm. So, have you written any comic books, or is that something you just like to write about characters from comic books?
No, I've written a few, not many. I've certainly done more lettering than I have writing, but I've written a few stuff that's been published. Some through Airship 27. This is an independent book publisher. Uh-huh. They've got a comic book division too called Redbud Studio, I believe it is. I wrote a story for them once, featuring an old pulp character called the Domino Lady. I'm not even sure if that story's still in print. I still have it, but I don't know if they still have it in print at all. There's I did some work with AC Comics. They're an independent, probably like one of the longest independent comic book publishers, and they have done a lot of stuff. Their big thing is the FemForce comic series. If anyone knows that, I started out with them as a letterer actually, and then parlayed that into some writing. So I did a little bit of writing for them, and did some writing with an Australian publisher. Did a short story for them. So I've done some here and there, but mostly it's in the comic book realm. Most of my work has been on the lettering side of things.
Now tell us about lettering. What does that entail?
So when you read a comic book, you see the little bubbles with the words in it and the sound effects. Basically all the text you see in a comic book, that's put there by a letterer. And so it's like you look at a book, a novel. Laying out a novel is relatively easy. It's probably one of the more easier types of layouts you can work with. You could even lay out a novel, not spectacularly, but decent enough in like Microsoft Word. But with comic books, it's very specific. In fact, before computers, they used to do it by hand, right? They would write it out they would write it by hand, and then they cut out the word balloons, and then they paste them on the page, on the Xerox pages. Now we do it all in computers with InDesign or Illustrator or whatever have you. And what happened was, years back when I was trying to get an independent comic book together, I had found an artist, but he didn't know how to letter. And so then I had the Adobe Creative Suite. I had Illustrator and all that through my college back then. Because I worked on the college newspaper. So I had access to all those tools. And I found some guides about how to letter comic books in Illustrator.
Okay.
And so I just said, okay, let me do it myself. Let me read these guides. Let me teach myself how to do it. And turned out I actually really kind of liked it. So then I just kept on doing it and started making my services available to publishers. And yeah, that's now become if you told me when I was, reading comic books and when I was in high school that eventually I'd be lettering them, I would have said, no, I'm going to be writing them. I'm not going to be lettering them. And then it turns out I actually have lettered more than I've written.
So, and that's the question I have. So when you're lettering, so it's already been written and they just want you to put it onto the comic? Or do you think of it yourself?
No. It's already been written. They send you a script, and the script is all detailed with panel 1, character A says this, character B says this. Sometimes they'll have specific instructions for sound effects, like they'll say they'll have the actual sound effect written out, like boom or bam or whatever. Sometimes they'll just describe it like an explosion, a gunshot. Yeah. And sometimes it's just up to your discretion. Like you see something and you're like, okay. Like I'm doing some work with a small studio called Rising Sun Comics now. I just started working with them. And I'm doing a lot of lettering on their Cobra the Enemy series, like some G.I. Joe fan comic stuff.
Okay.
And this story I was working on just yesterday, there were a bunch of pages where they had no dialogue and no sound effect descriptions at all. So I'm just like, okay, well, I don't want to just leave these pages completely blank. What are some stuff I can do here? Like, where are some things where I could put some text here or something to like enhance the mood or something, so people aren't just looking at a page with no art and wondering, hey, did the letterer, forget something here or something like that. So in those types of cases, and it depends on the creative team you're working with. It depends on the publisher. Some of them are very strict. They're like, you stick to the script 100%. Some of them are like, here's the script. Make some edits if you see them, make some, play with it, move stuff around if you have to. So yeah, it's a very kind of fluid process. Like you look at something like film, or it's so structured and everything has to be exactly this way. With comic books, it's definitely not like that. Like there is no set script format like there is in movies or TV. So
I got, before we end this segment, I gotta say, okay, I want to know this. Who is your favorite comic book superhero and why?
Oh, Superman, hands down. It's just, I think he's the first, right? He's the original one. And I'm one of those guys who went through the Superman phase in my teenage years where I'm like, Superman, he's so lame, right? Big Boy Scout. But as I got older and I started reading more of the comics, it's, I realized, this is a character that is supposed to represent the best in us, and he's supposed to inspire us to be better. And he's such an American mythology story, right? He's the ultimate refugee story. Comes across as a baby when he had nothing else, right? Not even his parents with him. Grows up and becomes accepted by the people. It's that classic American story that we tell ourselves we believe, but we don't always act in reality. And I think it's a good ideal to aspire to.
I like that. That's a great answer.
Thank you.
That's a great answer. And everybody, we're going to get a couple more answers from Perry Constantine when we come back with more of the Media Boss podcast. So stay right where you are. We'll be right back with more. How are you going to learn everything you need to know about starting a podcast? Well, at the Create Your Podcast Weekend, we put it all in 2 days and help you get your podcast going by next week. That's right, by next week. All you have to do is come to the Create Your Podcast Weekend and let us show you how to get your podcast up and running. We will show you how to attract listeners. We will show you how to get people to pay you for your products and services. What products and services? The products and services we show you how to create, all at the Create Your Podcast Weekend. All you have to do is go to createyourpodcastweekend.com and get registered today. And we have special bonuses. Some of you will even get us to give you the equipment to start your podcast. That's right. We're going to give some of you the podcasting equipment to get started. Go to createyourpodcastweekend.com. That's createyourpodcastweekend.com and get started on your podcast by next week. Starting a podcast can be a daunting task. There's a lot that goes into it, and you're probably wondering if you're able to handle it. Well, why don't you just take 2 days and let us teach you how to do it at the Create Your Podcast Weekend. That's right. We're going to show you all the aspects of how to start your podcast, how to keep your podcast going, how to attract listeners, and how to make money with your podcast. CreateYourPodcastWeekend.com. Get registered right now. Do you have a podcast? Would you like to have it heard by more and more people? Well, Pantheon is the way to go. Unlock the right mindset and tactics with our program. Create momentum with repurposed content. Get paid to build your business. And with Pantheon, we'll even show you how to have a team around you that gives you a community of encouragement. Check out Pantheon today.
You and me together, we could be anything.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Media Boss Podcast. I'm Dr. Barrett Matthews, and I am excited. I told you guys you would like this. I am sitting here talking with Perry Constantine, and we're having some fun. We're talking about his 30 books, and with more to come. We're talking about the comic books and Superman being his favorite superhero. But Perry, you are a podcaster too, aren't you?
I am. Yeah. I've done a few different podcasts, but the one that I'm doing currently and the one that's lasted the longest is the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. Okay. And that's where, I and a guest, we talk about superhero movies, superhero TV shows, and sometimes topics related to superheroes. We did an episode about superhero politics and superhero stories with a political science professor who's also a comic book writer and a superhero author. We did one about romance and superhero stories with a romance author. Just recently, I recorded it. It's coming out probably in January or February. But we did an episode about the whole concept of secret identities with another podcast host who does a Superman podcast. Uh-huh. So we did a whole discussion about, like, are secret identities necessary? When should they be used? When should they not be used? And we just kind of like dug into the idea of the trope. So we do some episodes like that. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And it started off a few years ago. I was talking to my buddy Derek Ferguson, who amazing writer in his own right. He wrote the Dylan series of action adventure novels. If you haven't checked out those, definitely look them up on Amazon. Okay. And he was basically kind of like my mentor, right? He was this guy who I met him through fan fiction. He was an older guy, and he kind of took me under his wing, and he kind of taught me a lot of things about writing and about story. Taught me we bonded over like our mutual love of movies and superheroes. And one day I said to him, I was doing another podcast about Japanese movies, and I had him on to talk about comparing Seven Samurai to The Magnificent Seven and the remake. And I had so much fun talking with him about movies that I just thought, I'm like, well, I want to do this more often. But I know he's not a Japanese film fan, necessarily. He likes them, but he wasn't like a devotee. So I asked, but I thought, well, what about superhero movies? So I asked him, hey, how would you like to do a podcast together about superhero movies? He's like, all right, sure. And he was retired, so it was very easy for him to come on whenever I had time in my schedule. And we did 60 episodes together. And then sadly, right before we were supposed to record our 61st episode, he passed away.
Oh no.
So that was about almost 2 years ago now, I think. Wow. And yeah, just very suddenly came out of nowhere. Like I hadn't heard from him in like 2 weeks, and he had said like he had to go to the hospital for some stuff. He said, but I'm fine, they'll let me out soon. And then just one day I saw his wife posting on his Facebook saying that he had passed away. It was just so sudden and unexpected.
The great thing about podcasting is that it can live on.
Yeah, and I'm like, even now, I still go back and I listen to those episodes with him, and because we would go on for like 2.5 hours sometimes with some of those episodes.
Wow.
He was just that kind of guy who would love to talk and just talk your ear off, and you never felt bored while he was doing it.
Yeah, I get it. I know the type.
Yeah, so then after he passed, I'm like, do I want to stop the podcast? Do I want to keep it going? What should I do? And so, I put out an episode letting people know the situation. Everyone's like, I think he would want you to keep going,
That's what I was going to ask. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so then I felt like, I don't know if I can find one co-host who can really replace him. So instead, I started doing this rotating guest format where I had different people come on for each episode. And that's been working out really good. I've actually done now, I am at... what episode am I on now? I'm actually not even sure because I've got episodes recorded so far in advance. But I'm over 120 episodes. I've now done more episodes in this new format than I did with him.
Okay, great.
And it's been a lot of fun. It's been really interesting. I mean, of course, I miss those interactions, but it's also given me a lot more to think about because I've had a whole lot more different perspectives into looking into these movies.
Yeah, that's cool. So before I let you go, let me ask you, is there something that you're working on that we can support you in?
The main thing is the podcast. That's the easiest thing you can support me on, right? It's free to listen to. You just go to superherocinephiles.com, and that's the website, and that'll have links to all the podcast platforms on there, or you just search it on your podcast app of choice. We've got a Patreon for that too. Again, the link for that is on the website. If you subscribe for $1 a month, you get the episodes a week in advance. And we also do a companion podcast where about once a month, we do an episode, sometimes me on my own, sometimes with a guest, where we talk about comic books instead of just the movies. And in addition to that, I've got my books, percivalconstantine.com is the website, and you can find links to all the books there. You can see what genre they're in. You can see what series there are. Everything's laid out, very easy to find. And some free books on there too. So you can go, and I've got a section marked for free books. So you can go there, you can sample some stuff, see if you like it, and then you will. So then you'll like it, and then you'll buy the others.
There you go. Well, Perry, I thank you so much for being a guest here on the Media Boss Podcast, man. I learned a lot, and I thought I had a lot of fun too. So I appreciate that.
Well, same here. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate the invite.
No problem at all. Hey guys, want to make sure you guys are supporting Perry. And if you're supporting the Media Boss Podcast, you can go to Patreon, go to patreon.com/Media Boss Podcast, and you can find out more about how you can support us. But I have a gift for you guys. I have a gift. That's right. A free training for you. If you want to get more clients, that pay you, go to www.5waystoPayingClients.com. That's 5waystoPayingClients.com. It's my gift from me to you. Now, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, and this is why I say we come back, remember I mentioned to you earlier, if you like traveling, I have something for you. So stick around. I have something for you. We'll be right back with more of the Media Boss Podcast. Do you have a podcast? Would you like to have it heard by more and more people? Well, Pantheon is the way to go. Unlock the right mindset and tactics with our program. Create momentum with repurposed content. Get paid to build your business. And with Pantheon, we'll even show you how to have a team around you that gives you a community of encouragement. Check out Pantheon today.
You and me together, we could be
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Media Boss Podcast. As I told you, you were going to have some fun today. I hope you guys took some notes too. Perry was fantastic. Check out his podcast. Check out his books too. I mean, I'm still amazed by that, guys. But hey, like I said, I have something for you. I mentioned earlier, go to patreon.com/Media Boss Podcast. You show us some love. We're going to show you some love right back if you want to support our podcast. And I just gave you guys a free gift, my 5 ways to paying clients. You can get that free training. Go to www.5ways, that's the number 5 ways to payingclients.com. Now, if you guys are really serious, if you're really serious about becoming a media boss, learning about books, learning about podcasting, film, streaming TV, Roku, YouTube, social media, come to my 5-day challenge. It's called the Make Money from Media Challenge. Go to www.makemoneyfrommediachallenge.com. Did I make it simpler or what? www.makemoneyfrommediachallenge.com. Register today. And guess what? If you see yourself as someone who, think you're a little better than most, and I think you should, because you should have high esteem for yourself, sign up as a VIP. Sign up as a VIP, because as a VIP, you get more. It'll show you when you go to the website. MakeMoneyFromMediaChallenge.com. Get signed up. If you want to start a podcast and you want some help, text the word podcast to 929-244-4323. 929-244-4323. Text podcast, and we'll not only show you how to get one started, we'll show you how to have one done for you. You like that? Huh? Now, I mentioned earlier about traveling. If you like traveling, well, here's what I'm going to do. If you like what you hear here on the Media Boss Podcast, go to Spotify or go to Apple iTunes, leave us a good review. Then screenshot that review and go to our Facebook page, Media Boss Club. Join the Media Boss Club. Go to our Facebook page, screenshot and leave that review there. I'm going to send you a $100 hotel savings card that you can use anywhere in the world. You just heard Perry talking. Perry's in Japan. He could use it there. You can use it anywhere in the world. So what I want you guys to do is make sure that you go leave us a great review, screenshot it, and put it into our Facebook page. And we look forward to seeing that there as well. Now, for those of you who've been here before, we don't leave the Media Boss Podcast like other podcasts. We have a special way we do that. So you ready? Here we go. Countdown from 3. 3, 2, 1. Media Boss out.